Get ready to find your recipe for a successful real estate lifestyle from America's top expert here at Greenlight REI with your host, Lance Edwards.
Well, everyone, hi. Welcome to this edition of Greenlight REI, where we interview the experts and discussing the real estate lifestyle. And today in this session, we've got a gentleman who's going to talk about that is Mr. Kent Clothier. Kent's the founder and CEO of Real Estate Worldwide, and he's had a tremendous growth in doing his real estate business. And we're talking today to us about growth. And I'm also going to pick his brain so you can talk about doing this business outside of your own backyard, which is on this topic I always hear a lot of questions about that. So Kent, welcome to Greenlight REI.
I'm glad to be here, my friend. I appreciate it.
And it's great to have you here. It's been a long time since we last spoke. And if you would, since you're probably the best expert on Kent Clothier than anyone, can you tell everyone what's your background and how you got to having this tremendous real estate organization?
Sure, absolutely. So I got started in the business back in late 2002, beginning of 2003 is when I did my very first deal. I'd come from a previous background in, believe it or not, flipping truckloads of groceries, kind of an arbitrage business where I was with my father for about 13 years and built a really, really gigantic organization at that point, a business that ultimately I was running when I was 30 years old that was doing almost $2 billion a year. And that ran its course. And ultimately, like I said, I got into real estate at the end of 2002, beginning of 2003, started wholesaling a few houses, doing it the old traditional way, the way everybody else does it out there. Took me a couple of years before all the lights started going off, and I quickly began to figure out that what I had experienced in my previous business that I was very, very successful with, a method that we had developed called reverse wholesaling, but I began applying it in real estate. So I started doing what is called reverse wholesaling, so kind of working backwards, kind of with the end in mind, and that bringing that business mind to what typically people were treating at that point kind of as a hobby more than anything else, quickly blew up that business. And before I knew it, we were flipping, our wholesaling hundreds and hundreds of houses each and every year, 200 and 300, which then kind of led me down a path of my family where we turned it into a turnkey business before anybody even knew what turnkey was. We were kind of the first to do that. Moved that business and basically all the centralized communication to Memphis, Tennessee. And our investing business has grown tremendously over the years. We now flip roughly about 900 houses a year as performing assets to investors all over the country, and ultimately manage those assets for them. So we also run a very large property management company that roughly manages about 6,000 houses in 7 cities. All of them that we have sold that customer and ultimately rehabbed, et cetera, et cetera. And then kind of as an offshoot of that, that kind of led us to a place where people really wanted to know the systems and processes and automation that we were using. So back in 2008, I started a company called Real Estate Worldwide and started showing people how to do what we do and use the tools that we had developed. And now I'm very, very fortunate that our reach is pretty broad, and we're considered an authority out there at this point, and have now had over 50,000 people that have bought our software trainings, and had people thousands and thousands of people every month that use our software. So it's been a good ride, and we just keep it going. That's all we can hope for, right? Just keep it moving along.
That's outstanding. And so you've gone from, interestingly, you had that great business background getting into real estate, and you started flips, became reverse wholesaling, then became automated. Did you have any idea when you were getting started in real estate that it was going to end up looking like this, or did it evolve, Kent?
Oh, no. It definitely all evolved and all happened organically. And what's interesting, as much as I preach about starting with the end in mind, that end has always been about a very specific business. Only when I got into my 40s and even into my late 40s did I really start to develop that mentality about kind of starting with the end in mind as it related to my life as well. But each one of these businesses were a product of a need that was kind of coming at us, a demand, if you will. So for example, as I was, when we went right through the recession, there were a lot of people that were struggling, and there were a lot of us that weren't. And our business happened to be growing by leaps and bounds right through the recession, right? It was basically growing by triple digits every year. The big reason that was happening is because of this method that we were using called reverse wholesaling, right? We had in our business, we were just dealing directly with cash buyers. We had cultivated and nurtured some amazing relationships. And so when all the banks and all the credit dried up, that had no impact on us. And I'd love to tell you that that was our big vision. It just wasn't. Our big vision was that our mode of operating at that point was we just wanted to go to the people that had the money, and we could bypass some of the headaches of the banks and the institutions and lenders and all that kind of stuff. So we was very self-serving. It just happened to be right. But that's kind of when the light bulb went off for our first, education and software product, is that we were using systems and processes that nobody had ever even thought to use. And so suddenly there were a lot of people that were coming to us that clearly knew that our business was growing and asking us that question, what if? And that's where the opportunity, suddenly appeared. It's like, wait a minute, people want to know this stuff. Why don't we show them? And that, kind of was the first step foray, if you want, into the education business. This was never something we wanted to do, nor would we ever plan to do. But the market kind of pulled us in that direction. Nobody had even ever heard of dealing directly with cash buyers before we developed our cash buyer product. Now it's just, people that are getting into the game today. There are hundreds of systems where you can go out and press a button and get access to cash buyers. Well, literally, before we started doing that never even existed. And so it's hard to appreciate today how much work that was just 10 years ago. But again, we did it. We brought it out there. The next thing people wanted to know how we were raising all of our money. Next thing people want to know how we were going out and finding all of our vacant houses. And so again, there was no big grand vision for not only a wildly successful investment company, but also a wildly successful education software company. The market just kind of pulled us in a direction, and we were just smart enough to recognize it and smart enough to get in front of it and quickly, help a lot of people. And by virtue of helping a lot of people, ultimately help ourselves.
That's fascinating. That's awesome, man. Now, I'm going to go back to something you said a moment ago, because this reverse wholesaling, and you brought it up a couple of times now. So what I heard you say a moment ago, this is a principle you were using in your previous wholesale business, unrelated to real estate, right, and you just carry it over from one industry to the next. So talk about, if you would, first of all, define for everybody, just make sure we're on the same page. What do you mean by reverse wholesaling, and how did it go from one industry into real estate? How did that come about?
Well, so the easiest way to think about reverse wholesaling is exactly what I was just saying a second ago, just starting with the end in mind. I mean, it seems very common sense, but the reality of it is there's very few people that do it this way because they're just not taught to do it this way. And it makes perfect logical sense that if we were sitting down talking about any business, that if you and I were sitting across the table from each other to talk about if I said to you, listen, why don't we just go to all of the customers out there that are actively buying this product and that are spending, an enormous amount of money on it? Why don't we just go interview them, cultivate and nurture a relationship with them, find out exactly what they want to pay, where they want to pay it, how much they want to pay, how much of it they can buy, et cetera, et cetera. Just really do a hardcore, deep dive with them. Ultimately, that would make, especially in a business like ours, that would make our job of going off and finding and creating those opportunities that much better. Whether, as opposed to us crossing our fingers and going out and just hoping that we have created something that somebody wants. Why don't we just go create the thing that we know they want? And so when I say it to you like that, I mean, for anybody listening to this, that just makes, I get it. But you'd be shocked at how many people don't do that, right? In fact, I would argue the vast majority of businesses don't do that. What we do is we go out and we think we have got a great idea, and our way of testing it is we build it, we get it all ready, and then we go to the customer with it, and again, cross our fingers and hope that we've got something that somebody wants to buy. Well, when I was a 23-year-old kid, I was in an industry that is called diverting, right? And in this industry, in the grocery industry, you've got roughly anywhere from 25 to 45,000 items inside of a grocery store. What most people don't realize is that inside of that grocery store, the manufacturers of every single one of those items sells that particular item for one price to that store or to the person selling the product to the distributor, but they will sell that exact same item at a completely different price, up to over 100%. And so it takes a guy like me and many others to basically figure out quickly, well, man, I can probably go buy this from one place, put it on a truck, go sell it to another place, just arrange for the shipping. And there's at least, there's a massive spread in there that I can make money on, because they have to have the item in the grocery store. And so, when you have a pent up demand, when you have to have Peter Pan peanut butter on the shelf, whether you pay, $30 for that case, or you pay $15 for that case, I mean, you want every opportunity you can get, right, to save a few bucks. And so that little business that my father and I started when we were 17, and by the time I was 23, was basically doing $50 million a year. Well, by the time I was 30, it was doing 1.8 billion. And what happened in that short span is exactly what I'm talking to you about. Basically, at one point in the process there, because I was so naive and didn't know any better, the world hadn't gotten to me yet, I basically had said, why don't we just go to all of our customers and ask them what they want to buy? Instead of everybody, because we had competitors, instead of us all competing over this one truck of Peter Pan peanut butter and everybody's trying to sell it, and it's just kind of a race to zero, margins are getting tight. Why don't we just go ask everybody, hey, if I could sell you anything at any price, delivered on any day in any quantity, what do you want? And we would get these, lists back from our customers of, I want 25 trucks of Clorox bleach. I want 5 trucks of Hellman's mayonnaise. I want, all the way, and everything in between. Well, then our job became infinitely easier. Instead of us running up and down the street, just like everybody else, trying to sell the one truck of Peter Pan, we were just going the other direction and saying, hey, if you can go find me this truck, I know I can buy 25 trucks of Clorox. If here's the price I need to pay. And so it made our job infinitely easier, because instead of selling, we were shopping. And so when I got into the real estate game, I went after it for a couple of years, just like I had been taught. I went to the 3-day event, just like everybody else. I had the guru at the time sell me this stuff, and I'm extremely grateful. I got into it. It introduced me to the business, and I was good at wholesaling houses, just like everybody else. But what flipped is when I started applying that reverse wholesaling methodology. When I came into the industry, I was like, well, why can't we do the same thing? And so the very first step in that process is you have to have avid buyers, right? Who are the people that are buying all the time? Who are the people that know exactly what they want? And those are investors, and investors typically are all cash buyers. So we developed a way of going into public records and identifying who the cash buyers were. We were doing this all manually back then. And we would go through and look in public record and look at people that had just purchased in the last 7 days, but a mortgage wasn't recorded. And by default, we just assumed they were cash buyers. We would get them, we would start sending letters to them. We'd get them on the phone. And then we would ask them that same question, man, if I can go out there and create anything for you, and I know you want to buy a lot, what do you want to buy? And so that immediately directed all of our seller marketing, all the properties we were creating. It was just a much more efficient process versus what most of us were taught to do, was just go find an off-market deal, drive up and down the streets, send some direct mail, put out some bandit signs, just go do whatever you got to do to generate a deal. And if you buy it at a deeply discounted price, magically the buyer was going to appear. And so this way we were kind of working exactly the other direction. We were very, very diligent and intentional with everything we were doing, because we clearly knew what our buyers would buy if we could create it. And, the business exploded. And like I said, that particular model, it has been tried, it's tried and true. It works in every single market around the country. It works in every single up or down or sideways market. And in fact, it was a huge hedge that we didn't realize at the time. It was a huge hedge for us against the recession when all of the credit dried up, because now we weren't counting on banks to do anything. I have all of these cash buyers that are ready to buy, and now there's just even more opportunity when the recession hit. And so, like I said, our business just kind of exploded through that entire process. And ultimately, that's what kind of gave us our notoriety and our authority in the market, as people started to recognize what we were doing.
Super. So, all right. So you're going to the buyer, you're dropping the model, build it and hope they come. No, I'm not going to do that. What are you buying? Let me go find the product that you want to buy. And then you mentioned a moment ago, you've also now evolved into the property management business. I imagine that's just another offshoot of what they need to buy, these buyers, right? This extra service they need. Talk a little bit about that if you would.
Well, one of the keys to in my opinion, I've built, several big businesses now throughout my life. And I can tell you one thing that at least I know to be true is that there are three very definitive ways to scale a business. And one is you do more transactions. The second is you do bigger transactions. But the third is that you understand clearly all of the other transactions that are happening before or after your transaction, effectively giving your what's called vertically integrating. So and a great example of that is what you pointed out. So what was happening in our business is that as we started bringing in buyers, we were bringing in a lot of out-of-state buyers, and we were selling them properties, but they were, a lot of times they were getting stuck in the process. So we'd sell them a house and they were trying to, rehab a house from a distance, and then they'd rehab a house and try to put a renter in there. And so now they needed to get a property management company, et cetera, all the way down the line, right? What was the transactions that came after my transaction? So I'd sell it, and then it was, a title company, and then it was insurance, and then it was a rehab, and then it was managing contractors, and then it was getting, or then it was property management, and then it was getting refied out of the deal and turning the money again. So every one of those steps, our approach at that particular time was, how can I get the customer to buy more from me quicker, right? How can I get them back into the top of my funnel as fast as possible? Because I sold them one house, how can I turn it to 2, 3, 4, 5? And the easiest way for us to go about doing that was to begin building out our organization to provide these services that kind of grease the gears, if you will, right? To use a term from the South. It's just keep making it easier for the customer and the transaction to keep moving forward and ultimately get them to a place where they could come back into my process. And so that's how property management came about, right? We basically started the rehab company and started rehabbing all these properties for our clients because we knew we could do it better than they could get somewhere else. And so now the rehab side of our business is a very big business. And then ultimately then it was the property management. And so we started building a property management company that our clients could now not only buy a property from us, but then they could have the property rehab, and then we would property management for them. And before you knew it, we were providing this entire ecosystem, this entire turnkey solution where anybody in the country now could do business with us. They did not have to be local. It didn't matter if they were sitting in San Francisco. They could confidently buy a house in Memphis, Tennessee, or Dallas, or Houston, or anywhere else we were operating, and everything was being done for them, which just made it easier for them to keep buying from us. And so that's one thing I would definitely tell you, that if anybody that's listening, is a key way to grow your business is not necessarily to go and do more transactions or bigger transactions. Just understand the life cycle of your customer and start figuring out how you can partner with and or do it outright. Provide the services that they need in order to get them back into the top of your funnel quicker. So, and that's how property management came about for us. And now, like I said, it's almost 6,000 properties. And every one of them, every one of those properties, we sold them initially, by the way.
And so you go back to the keyword you're using, turnkey. You basically made it possible for them to say, yes or no, I'm going to do it. Here's a check, and take it from there. Right? I mean, that's correct. Basically what you created for them.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, one of the key benefits, if you will, or things that people love, certainly passive investors, they love about syndications or whatever, is that it's just, they don't have to do anything, right? It's I invest money and I get mailbox money back, right? And I have an asset sitting there and somebody else has managed it, somebody else responsible. Okay, but that particular model is very challenging, up until that point, was very challenging to do inside of single family homes. But that's now what it is, right? Now we've created this every part of the transaction that Memphis Invest, now called REI Nation, we just changed our name. Every part of the process for our clients is now managed. And we own it end to end. It's not an outside company. We own it end to end. So an investor can come in and say, hey, I want to want to buy a house, $150,000 house. Okay, you're going to have to put 30 grand down. Here's the lender that's going to do it. We've already rehabbed the property. We've got somebody in there that went in the last 2 months. It's a 2-year lease. We'll manage the whole asset for you. You're going to pay us, a small management fee. It's just easy. And that's when you make it easy for people to do business with you, that's how you attract a lot of money, a lot of opportunity your way.
Right. And repeat business, as you were saying a moment ago.
That's exactly
Get them
right.
buying
People
over and over from
money,
you.
hang out with people that have money. Yep, absolutely.
All right. And okay, so this is just fascinating what you're doing, Kent. And so we've painted this great picture how this thing has evolved. You've got the systems, and you're running nationwide. Matter of fact, you've renamed the company now to reflect that nationwide presence. So let's bring that back. So you're in the education business now. That's one of your other businesses. How do you teach someone to start from doing that first wholesale transaction, even if they have the buyers, to scaling up, if that is their ambition? Is there a sequence of steps they need to go through? Kind of paint a picture.
Yeah.
What does their mindset need to be?
Well, so the very first phase is certainly, what we call the hobbyist, right? And so the hobbyist is trying to get out of that 9 to 5. They're trying to create enough income so they can walk away, effectively trying to replace their income and know that they're at least secure, right? And being able to do it get a predictable outcome on a consistent basis, which that's just a product of what we call revenue generating activities. You have to keep marketing, you have to talk to buyers, you have to talk to sellers, you have to do deals. I mean, it's just over and over and over. But in order to move to the next phase, you really, ironically, that hustler, that hobbyist, that side of your brain, everything that got you to this point that was very foreign to you just a year earlier, all of that has to go away. Because the same person that's in the trenches flipping the houses every single day or whatever they're doing will not naturally turn into an entrepreneur, a real business owner, right? And if you really think about the book, The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, I mean, that's a great book that kind of illustrates this point, right? You have the technician that's in there doing it, and the evolution is you want to get ultimately to the entrepreneur, the E-Myth. And just by virtue of you starting a business and hustling up and down the streets and doing deals, you do not own a business. You own a job, as we can all attest to out of the gate. That's just the first phase. And the easiest way to figure out if you have made the transition from owning a business or owning a job is just leave. Just go on vacation for a month and don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
And if you come back and there's more money in your bank account than when you left, you probably own a business. Anything less than that, you own a job. And so making the transition means you now have to begin to put, first off, you have to recognize and identify that hustler side of you is the enemy. You have to get very, very comfortable with the idea of using leverage in your business now. And the biggest leverage point is out of the gate is going to be leveraging people and processes and automation. So the first hurdle is, how do I hire people, right? And so getting really comfortable with hiring A players and the process that you have to go through that, identifying people, hiring people, investing a lot of time, effort, energy, and training those people. That's a challenging transition, because at the same time you're doing that, what naturally is going through your head is, well, I could be out there flipping houses and I'm sitting in here for 3 hours a day training somebody. But unless you train them, you'll always be stuck flipping houses and owning a job. So, you got to get really comfortable being uncomfortable. But that investment, it pays off a percentage of time, but it is nowhere near what people expect. People expect I'll put somebody in the seat and naturally this is all going to just work out. It doesn't happen like that, right? You're going to go through the bumps and bruises of hiring people that clearly don't care about your business as much as you do. But if they care about your business, as little as 80% as much of you as you do, or they take 80% of the task of a particular job out of your hair, all that 80% of that time ultimately comes back to you. And that's really what owning a business is about, is owning your time. And so that's a huge, huge leverage point, is to understand that automating your marketing, getting good sound processes in place, and getting good people to work that automation and processes, getting that all in place, and then using what we use in our business is a set of numbers, like KPIs, key performance indicators, to have a good bird's eye view of what's going on in your business in a snapshot, in a second, where you can understand what's the strengths and weaknesses of your business in a matter of seconds. That's that again. Now that is the evolution. That is the process that you go through into getting to where ultimately you get to the manager and then ultimately the entrepreneur. Because that manager phase, that takes a couple of years. You really got to get, and people are not naturally comfortable managing people. People are not naturally comfortable just watching a few numbers and being able to identify problems in their business and react accordingly. People have a tendency to be very knee-jerk. People have a tendency to overreact. People are overcorrect. And so there's a process. Like, we spend a lot of time in this in my business, educating people on this, on this is what it looks like to start making this transition. And then ultimately, when you do get to the entrepreneur side, the last phase, if you will, is when, okay, I'm a manager. I've got a handful of people that are running my business on a day-to-day process. I still love the grind. I'm in it. I'm doing everything I need to do. There's still key parts of the business that I have to be in control of, whether that's sales or acquisition or marketing or whatever it is. That last phase is really where the freedom comes in. Ultimately, putting yourself in a position to where you let go completely. And not let go because you have to, let go because you have the option of letting go. You've done a good enough job to get everybody into places. You have a good enough management dashboard in place that you can understand what's going on in the business. You're truly the leader of the business. But if you don't show up for a week or 2 weeks or whatever, and you want to take the kids, or you want to go and coach your kids' basketball game, or go to your daughter's cheerleading, or whatever you want to do, right? Like I do, then having the option of doing it versus having to do it is the final kind of mental breakthrough. When you finally realize you've got it, like the cash register is going to sing whether I show up or not. So let me take the time to make sure I'm present and doing the things that really matter in life, being there for my kids, my family, my charities, all the things that really matter to me. That's that last evolution. And when you get there, which we're all trying to get there, that's when, that's what it's all about. But you don't get there overnight. You have to kind of go through this process, at least in my opinion, to get there. But once you're there, and you're getting the outcome in a predictable way, whether you show up or not, I mean, that's the good stuff. That's what it's all about, baby.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I'm going to add one more point here that I'm going to let you give some, I know you got some resources for our listeners. I think the biggest challenge of that process, you mentioned it's a process, Ken, the biggest challenge is, I don't know about you, but when I was in school, they never taught me this entrepreneurial stuff. They certainly didn't teach me real estate. They taught me how to be a good employee. So and for everybody stepping out into this entrepreneurial world, we got decades of conditioning of how to think like a good employee. And that mindset doesn't serve us too well when we're trying to be the entrepreneur. Would you agree with that?
I agree 100%. In fact, I mean, I will tell you, I was very fortunate. When I was growing up, I never thought. I mean, I thought my father. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My father was, very hard on us. But as I got older, and I was never conditioned to be an employee ever. Not one time in my life. My entire life, I was taught to be an entrepreneur, and so. It's a huge blessing when you don't get those.
Oh my gosh.
For lack of a better way of saying it, bad habits, right? But as I've worked with tens of thousands of people, it's the most common thing, as you point out, is that people have preconceived notions. And it gets worse by the day because they gain a little bit of information on whether it's on the internet or they've watched a YouTube video or they listen to a podcast or whatever, and they go into building a business or starting a business without any kind of appreciation for the time, effort, and energy that it takes to do this. And so they get disillusioned very, very quickly. And all of that, the reason why they tap out so quickly is because they don't have good level set expectations. In other words, the world has not prepared them for what it really is. I mean, I was giving this analogy this weekend at one of my masterminds, and I was telling somebody that the best example that I can think of this is that I could sit there and watch as many YouTube videos as I want, and I could sit there and read as many books and listen to as many podcasts as I want about being an MMA fighter. And I can think I know everything there is to know, but until I actually step in the ring and get punched in the face a few times, I don't really know. And so think about what an MMA fighter really does, right? I mean, literally every day they're training. Think of the courage that takes and the kind of mentality that takes to willfully know that I'm stepping into the cage or I'm getting on the mat, and the person on their only job is to punch me in the face as hard as they can to try to knock me out, or to get me to tap out, get me to give up. But yet people do it every single day. I have a really good friend, a guy by the name of Pat Precourt, that loves MMA fighting, and he gets in there every day. He's my age, 49, and he just loves getting punched in the face. And I'm just like, oh my God, I mean, what is that? I mean, but that's what business is. You have to actually love the process. You have to love the struggle. You have to embrace it. You have to position the struggle and all of the ups and downs and the getting hit in the face. You have to position that as the win, because you're actually learning what this business is all about. And you're not taught that in school. You're not taught what it looks like. You're like you said, you're taught to go to work for somebody else and make somebody else rich. If you want to make yourself rich and you want to go off and fight for your dreams, you have to go into it clearly knowing that it is not always cupcakes and rainbows and sunshine, and you're never, perfection is the enemy. You're never going to have it perfect before you make a move. You literally just have to get as much insight and knowledge and understanding as you can, step into the ring and actually start getting hit. And then, and only then, do you really kind of improve and get to the places that ultimately you want to get to and turn into a champion. There's just no shortcuts to it. I mean, guys like us make it as easy as we can to connect dots for people and to provide, like I said, that knowledge and understanding. But quite frankly, until you get into the ring, there's just nothing like it. And so nobody's ever prepared you for it, nor could they ever prepare you for it until you actually do it.
Yeah, it's all academic to that point. Until you get punched in the face, it's all theoretical. It's all theoretical. It's a brutal analogy, but I think it's nevertheless accurate. I mean,
it just really is. And again, you think about how insane, if you think about how insane that sounds, anybody that would expect to be a MMA fighter by reading a book or watching a YouTube video or taking a course, if I told you that that's what I was doing, hey, Lance, I got this whole thing going down. You're going to love this. I've read all the books. I've watched all the videos. I've taken a few courses on it. I think I'm an MMA champion. I got my first bout here next week. You would look at me like I'm crazy.
Yeah.
But people do it in business all the time, right?
Because that's the model and that's the model. I didn't mean to interrupt. That's the model we've all been taught, because the model was go read this book, study it, take this test, get an A. Here's your reward. And that has nothing to do with reality in the entrepreneurial world. Now, your education begins once you step in the ring. That's when the education begins. Actually,
right, and I think the more people that understand that, the more successful they will come quicker. Because what happens is if you go into it expecting to get hit, I know you run into it, and I run into it all the time, is how many people come into business and it's their first iteration, and they've tried to cross every T and dot every I. I've got the LLC perfect, my logo's perfect, all this other stuff, and they're just not prepared to get hit. And that first hit, when it comes, it's just such a brutal awakening for them. It's just not positioned correctly mentally. The hit they position as failure. When if you walk in the ring and expect to get hit, and expect to get hit over and over and over again, and learn how to avoid the hits, that's the win. That's how you're winning. Every single day, you're just getting better at the process. When you position it that way, then taking the hits is just part of it. It's not failure, it's just learning.
Yes, and then every experience becomes a benefit to you. How do we become better the next time?
I'm gaining massive wisdom, massive insight. I'm becoming a much better entrepreneur. I know what to do. I know what not to do. Listen, I got to where I am, not because I've always been successful. I would much rather you grade me on all my failures, because I have failed at an enormous level many, many, many times over. But you just have to keep moving, because that's where the successes come from.
Yeah, this is cool stuff. And I hope everyone's paying attention. This is great wisdom. These are the facts of the matter. real estate, any business, stepping out on your own. This is the facts of the matter. Kent's just sharing it here and, encapsulate it in a short period of time. Kent, people are going to want to get involved with you. They're going to want to follow you. You've got some resources you wanted to share. Can you share that with everyone right now? How can they plug in with you, and what do you got for them?
Yeah, so the easiest way to connect with me is I'm very active on social media. Just go to Facebook and hit me up. It's Kent Clothier on Facebook. Same thing on Instagram, Kent Clothier. You can even go to kentclothier.com if you want. And connect with me right there. But for everybody here, just for hanging out with us, if you want to go download a free resource, a free book that really explains the whole reverse wholesaling process, which I would easily argue is probably the lowest barrier of entry into real estate, and kind of, like I said, get the juices flowing, get you excited, and actually give you actionable steps on how you can do that. You can just easily go to the website, free ebook from Kent. It's free ebook from Kent.com. Just go there and happily download the PDF. It's an easy read. You can probably get it all done in one day, and then it kind of lays out what this all looks like and why we are so passionate about it and why so many people over the years have had success with it.
All right, and I'll put this on the show notes for everyone. Free ebook from Kent.com. Free ebook from Kent.com, and you get that on the show notes at greenlightreinvesting.com. Hey, Kent, this has been fabulous. I'm really, really impressed. There's a lot of stuff you're doing I wasn't aware of these days. Really impressed with what you've done. It's a true entrepreneur, And hey, listen, before we depart here, you got any final tips of wisdom that you want to share for people that are listening? Maybe some of those are coming in the ranks here early on, first time. Getting the last bits of wisdom.
Yeah, I'll share one last thing with everybody here. So, as a lot of people know this, probably a lot don't, but my mantra, if you will, for the last few years has all been about the time is now, right? You go into my office, literally those 4 words are everywhere. It's tattooed on my arm, for God's sakes. Thousands of people walking around with the time is now, little bands around their wrist. A lot of people, one of the most healthy things I think you can do as an entrepreneur is have a really, really good respect for time. I think people that walk around and act like they'll get to it tomorrow, next month, next year, I honestly, if I'm being very candid, I can't think of anything more disrespectful than that. Is just not having respect for that. The clock is ticking on every single one of us, and we all, nobody gets out alive. We all have a clock that's ticking on us. We don't all understand exactly when that clock's going to get punched, but it surely is. And there is no better time than right now to start fighting for your dreams. There is no better time to start putting yourself in a position to make things that you never dreamed were possible. Just take one step every single day to making that happen. It is the most, it is such a huge driving force in almost everybody, all successful entrepreneurs that I know. They are in a hurry to create the best outcome and the best version of themselves as they can. And it's a daily thing. It may not be these huge monumental risks they're taking or these huge, but every single day they're trying to improve themselves. Every single day they're putting themselves in a position to continue to win. And I think that comes from just having a real healthy respect for time. And if you want to, I'll say this, if you want a really quick exercise, I'll leave you guys with this. If you want a really quick exercise to understand the point I'm making, if you're an American male, I'd invite you to put down on a piece of paper the number 78, an American female, put down the number 82, and just subtract your current age. And the average American male lives to 78, the average American female lives to 82. When you subtract your age, you will clearly see, statistically speaking, how many years you have left on this planet. Now just simply go multiply that number times 365, and you will now have a pretty good idea of, statistically speaking, how many days you have left on this planet. And when you have that front and center, whether it's on a whiteboard or it's on a bathroom mirror or whatever, and you every single morning just take one of those days off and quite literally watch your life count down, you'll be shocked at how, from a mental standpoint, that will start to put you where you understand that, again, whether you have a healthy appreciation for it or not, you will begin to have a much healthier appreciation when you kind of watch it in a very visual way. And you'll start taking actions that, you know it as well as I do. Quite frankly, nobody cares. None of us are as important as we think we are. whether it's on social media or whether our friends, family circle, at the end of the day, it's your life. Go for it. Go get anything you want, but you got to take steps every day. Listen to podcasts like this, educate yourself, and get in the game. Do what it takes to go get it because it's there to be had. And that's what I would leave you with.
That's great wisdom. This ain't no dress rehearsal. So
amen, baby. No mulligans here, right?
Get started. Exactly. Get started right now. And as Kent just pointed out, he and I are closer to the end than we are at the beginning. So get to work.
Get to work.
Kent, this has been fantastic. This is fantastic. For everyone who wants to take advantage of what Ken's offering here, free ebook from Kent.com, free ebook from Kent.com. Get plugged in with Kent Clothier and what he's doing, whether you're getting started, scaling up your business. He's a real deal. And so get plugged in with him. And for everyone, I want to congratulate you for showing up today. Go to these archives, greenlightreinvesting.com. Get access to the free resources we're providing to you there. And do me a favor, I've listened to this on iTunes. If you're not, go to iTunes, give us a positive review so we can spread the word on the great resources available here. So until the next time, everyone, make your lifestyle a successful real estate one. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.
You've been listening to The Expert with Lance Edwards. Let us now blatantly and shamelessly bribe you toward creating your own real estate lifestyle by offering you a whole bunch of free stuff. Go to greenlightreinvesting.com and get you some free stuff and this session's show notes.